Most people didn't even know that I'd been chucked off LinkedIn because they were still getting emails from me. That was key. But during that time, I did suddenly think, okay, what am I going to do next? Because actually, a LinkedIn expert with no LinkedIn account is a bit like a struck-off doctor. No one is going to hire a LinkedIn expert with no LinkedIn account, however good your reputation is. So then I thought, okay, what's next?
Welcome to Legal Off The Leash, the podcast where we take the legal profession out of the box and into a happier, more fulfilling future.
We're your hosts, Scott Simmons and Elizabeth de Stadler. On today's episode, we're diving into the worlds of LinkedIn and Substack with someone who has mastered them both. We're talking to Melanie Goodman, a former city lawyer who now helps lawyers and other regulated professionals use LinkedIn in a way that actually reflects how good they are at their jobs. Melanie left law to build Trevisan Consulting, a CPD-accredited LinkedIn training and consultancy practice, because she kept watching brilliant professionals being visible online while people with half the expertise posted their way to opportunities. Melanie writes about LinkedIn strategy for regulated professionals on her Substack, The Link Tank, and she also offers a fully managed, done-for-you LinkedIn service for professionals who'd rather focus on their practice than their posting. Melanie, welcome to Legal Off The Leash.
Thank you for having me.
So I've been really excited to meet you and chat with you about LinkedIn and also Substack, hear your story on both
I'm
of
excited about Substack.
those. Right.
Okay.
So we're going to come to both of those.
Okay.
Tell us a bit about your background and how you came into the world of LinkedIn.
And out of law.
So I worked for a law firm for many, many years until I joined a Panamanian law firm back in 2006. I worked with them for about 8 or 9 years doing their business development in London and Switzerland, where I lived for 16 years. And then after the Panama Papers, they pulled out of Europe. So I was like, okay, I have to do something different. But what I had gained over that time was because I was using LinkedIn for the law firm's business development, I had realized the potential of using it and helping other lawyers and regulated professionals, those in finance, etc., to actually leverage it themselves. And I realized that there were reams of people who were not using it, didn't know how to use it, and were happy for someone to show them how to and to help them actually build their networks and bring in some new clients using it. So that was how I started. I then started Trevisan back in 2017. And that's exactly what I did. And it's basically grown from there. We're now 9 years old and have not looked back. I have still got my practicing certificate because I do draft social media policies for firms still. But obviously I'm not practicing on a daily basis because I'm teaching people how to use LinkedIn and now Substack as well.
I heard you say I'm 90 years old. And we should maybe clear that.
Not quite. Although some days I feel it. The business is 9 years old. So Trevisan is nearly 9 years old. I need to obviously talk clearer. Nearly 9 years old rather than me being nearly 90.
Sorry.
No. Okay, so it's a good first comeback to a really good opener by Melanie. So thanks for that. So why LinkedIn?
I think it's 1.3 billion professionals on it now. It's still the largest business network. It's not a job board, or not just a job board, as I know I think its old reputation is. It's an incredible, fast-moving business development tool if you know how to use it. So I think that's the biggest barrier to people being effective on it and seeing an ROI on their time on there, is that basically they're not using it properly. So they're going on there, doing the odd post, sending the odd connection request, and then wondering why business isn't rolling in. And I'm sure you know, Scott, you're on LinkedIn very regularly, if not most days. And it's not magic. It doesn't happen like that. You have to be, it sounds really trite, but you do have to be consistent. People have to get to know you, get to know your personality to want to work with you. So there's a know, like, trust. And it's basically like building any other relationship, but you're building it on LinkedIn, you're building it online. So that sort of, yes, you might put a post out there and somebody gets back to you and says, that's exactly what I need. I've been looking for someone with your skills or your services, and that's brilliant. But that's not an everyday occurrence. you have to be engaging in your private messages. And that's normally where people actually convert, is that, you've spoken a few times, you've then taken them offline, had real conversation with them, even maybe met them in real life. And that's usually how people convert.
Scott did that to me.
He sent you a direct message.
Yeah. Like, do you know when it's been successful? Is I can't remember who contacted who. Like, that's how you know this was a good warming up.
Yeah.
So what you said early on about people make this assumption that you'll post a couple of times and work will start rolling in. You see that all the time, how quickly people give up because they genuinely think, oh, if I just post something, it'll be so brilliant and so many people will see it. And so they build it all up. And when it doesn't happen, when I went back onto LinkedIn towards the end of 2020, I think I posted for nearly 12 months before there was this kind of regular trickle. It wasn't for 18 months until I was at the point where it was really kind of busy because of it. But I think it was something like 3 months before I got even my first inquiry. That wasn't even my first client. My first inquiries, I mean, you have to remember, I'm talking about the two most unpopular subjects in the legal profession, business development and pricing. So I'm not expecting, but people think that it's one post, everyone's going to love it. Do you see a lot of that? Do you hear a lot of that?
Yeah, I think people just get frustrated quickly because they hear about all these people who are going on LinkedIn and, you see gurus and, and they send 4 messages and then, they've got their first big client in and they're like, oh, well, I've been doing this for 6 weeks and I haven't had anything, right? It obviously doesn't work. Well, it does. But also I think the biggest mistake that I see people making is that they post what they want to post rather than thinking about the problems or the pain points of the people that they want to connect with. So it's like I might, wake up in the morning and think, right, I want to tell everybody about Substack today. But if they're not interested or they don't want to know about Substack, then that post is not going to go anywhere. I need to always be posting what people want to know about. They want to know how to do something better on LinkedIn, how to do something more effectively. I try and give people what they want. And I think that's the biggest mistake that people make is they put out the content that they want to get out there rather than what necessarily their ideal client wants to read. And so I think it's that mismatch that once you've got that sorted, then your posts start to really gain traction.
Shall I just keep going, Elizabeth? Because I've got a million questions, but
keep going.
I'm just thinking, shit, I'm doing it wrong.
Well, hold on.
Because
there is a question in.
I'm like, it's also for me about personality. And then at some point, I also just stopped telling people what I do. Because I think what I struggle with personally is how much hard selling do you do? So how much is just obvious selling posts where I go, this is what I do, or here's a review from a client, versus true sort of content marketing where I'm putting out information that's relevant to my audience, but I'm not necessarily going to say, how I can help them. Sometimes because I can't.
If I can't help people, I tell, like, if I don't think I'm a good fit for somebody, I'll tell them.
Yeah.
For me, personally, I would say only probably about 10% of my posts are selling posts. I rarely ever put out testimonials. I did do one last week because we ran this boot camp for LinkedIn and Substack and we had some really good feedback. So I did one post where I had some of the feedback we'd had from the first session. I tend not to do that. I try and get people to leave me a recommendation on LinkedIn so they're there for people to see. Rather than them pushing them out to people. To be quite honest, part of that is also I just have so much content that I actually don't have any time. Like, I just don't have room in my schedule to put out those testimonial. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I actually had a gap where I sort of sat there and thought, what am I going to put out? Because I've always got stuff in drafts. I've always met somebody. I mean, obviously I'm going to put out a post like later on, probably today. I already met one of my connections this morning, Karina Goats, and then I can put out about our podcast today. So there's I always have content. So that's sort of like what I call filler content I don't normally have. That said, obviously you want people to know what you do, but that should be obvious from your profile if it's set up correctly. So it should say so on your profile. So people should know from reading your headline what you do, your about section. Hopefully you're set up so that you come up in searches if people are looking, if your profile is set up correctly. And then, you've got your featured section where you can you could put your testimonials in there. So I often say to people, if you've got good testimonials, put them in your featured section, because it's like a shop window. So yeah, but anyway, I think if you keep selling in posts, people just get turned off because it's boring for people generally. You sort of subtly want to tell them that you're good, like every so often maybe, but not if you keep doing that every week, you're putting more testimonials. It's a bit like, okay, but you just start people to scroll on.
So you mentioned loads of inspiration for posts, having it in your notes app. This is something that I think so many people find really, really tough, because you can start and you can feel like, okay, I've got lots of things that I want to say. But for a lot of people, maintaining that can feel difficult. Where does the inspiration come from for you, Melanie? And how do you help others find that inspiration for posting?
Client conversations and conversations with connections. Because as soon as somebody comes to me with either an issue they've got with LinkedIn, they don't know how to do something on LinkedIn, their thoughts, that all provides me with the basis of a post, not obviously the finished post. Then you've got industry trends. So what's going on in your industry? So if you're a lawyer, most people are like reading the Law Gazette or whatever. And so you can use the basis of some of those as post ideas. Look at your diary for the week, see what you're doing. Even if you're not busy, write about that. If you are busy, write that you're busy. There's literally, and then why you're not busy that week or why you are busy that week. Personally, I steer away from the sort of like really personal posts, just because, but I mean, each to his own. Some people have, made careers out of posting their personal life. So that's it depends how much you want to expose yourself. I mean, I personally don't, but that's because then I find people go and stalk me on other platforms. So like, I find them pop up on like my Instagram and stuff, like my personal Instagram, which I don't post on either. So they're usually out of luck there if they think they're going to find much on there. For that reason, it's like, I'm just probably because social media like LinkedIn or Substack is my work. When it comes to personal stuff, I don't really want to share myself with the entire world. So you won't find much. I mean, funnily enough, I did one for Mother's Day yesterday, which is quite unusual for me, but there's still like, no, I don't post pictures of my kids because they're actually grown up now, so they're not even cute. So no one wants to see them anyway. They're like teenagers. And but even when they were little, I didn't post pictures of my kids or my dog. I've got like a massive dog who made quite good content actually, but for me that's like it's like very low rent content. I'd have to be quite desperate. There's always something like business orientated, something new that's happening. There's always something, we live in a constantly evolving world without sounding like ChatGPT. There's always something new going on to write about. Even if it's that you've used a new app, got a new subscription to something, share it, tell other people about it, let them learn from it. People really appreciate when you share a new resource or a new tool you're using. Or funny enough, John Lisperian just did a post this morning where he said he'd reduced his subscriptions and he recommended some changes. And I actually said, like, my subscriptions are out of control. I need some rein mine in. And so actually it's like on my to-do list for this week. There you go. There's an idea for a post. The subscriptions that you've got rid of or need to get rid of, and ask people for recommendations. That's a great one, because if you ask for people for something, for some feedback or recommendations, you've created conversation on your post, which LinkedIn likes, and they'll then push that post out further.
I think what I like most about your content is that it is looking at actually what's happening and what's useful right now in this kind of moment. There's a lot of content out there that looks at research that's happened over the previous 12 months and is therefore informing what you should do now based on what was happening 12 months, 6 months, wherever go. And all you're finding is that what people are then doing is that they are jumping on these ideas that were working months and months ago. Your content, what I enjoy about it is that you're looking at things that are informing the way that you do something right now. So you've found something or you've discovered something and you're putting it out there and you're saying, these are things that you should be looking at. So you were talking about your profile page. These are things that impact people every single day in those moments. And so much of your content is like that. And I don't see so much of that. You mentioned John Asperian, who's great as well. But a lot of what's out there is look at what's been going on over the last 12 months. This should inform what you do for the next 12, except the algorithm changes all the time. I can't stand the algorithm, by the way. I think everyone is incredibly obsessed by it, and it just leads to LinkedIn fatigue. Whereas there are things that are just constant. That's the stuff that you talk about that lasts throughout all of the algorithm changes.
Yeah, focused on how to, so practical things you can do. And I mean, to be honest, that's just a natural reflection of what I'm like actually as a person. So I'm very practical. And I probably because I don't have a marketing background, because I started in law, that I'm not sort of into like lots of marketing fluff and jargon and let's talk about content pillars and let's talk about matrices. And, I'm like, no, like you don't need to do that. You're totally overcomplicating it. I find a lot of marketing agencies are like obsessed by, having, I mean, obviously we need to look at some metrics, but, all these sort of like complicated matrices and graphs and no, like it's not that complex. You can basically you can put out content, you can earn money. You do not need to make it this complex, apart from to look like you're charging for something. When I work with someone on a content plan and I come up with content for them and create the content, it's much simpler. It's like, what do you do? What do you want to tell everybody about? And make sure that there is a mix of content, so we're not putting out the same thing, the same type of post every time. So you've got a carousel, then we might have an infographic, might have a poll, but really this is LinkedIn. This is as complex as it really needs to get. And then of course it's a case of obviously putting together the post properly, formatting it and making sure that it's in your voice and it sounds like you and it's authentic. I just think that a lot of marketing agencies really do overcomplicate it. I don't know if it's to justify a fee, but it's just a case of putting your voice over in the best possible way so that people want to work with you. And that is really what it's about. It's not rocket science. What is harder is knowing how the platform works. So really understanding actually the way that it works, which is like the foundation. So if you know how to search engine optimize your profile, it will automatically then come up in the right searches. And that's when people will find you. And actually, that's the bit that's normally missing for people, is that they've gone straight in with hiring a marketing company. They're like, right, we want to create this whole new brand image and you're going to create all this content. And normally I'm like, actually, we need to wind back. We need to look at your actual individual profiles. And often I'll find, if we just go into the settings, we'll see that actually their profiles are hidden. They haven't even got them public. So people they're not connected to can't even see anything on their profiles. It's like, oh. So I think there's often the foundation stages are often missed because people want to go large on LinkedIn and like have these grand plans. But actually, you need to scale it back. You need to go right back to the basics. How is your profile set up in the right way? And then from there, you then start putting out content. There's absolutely no point in putting out content on a profile that doesn't tell people what you do. If it just says partner at, that tells people nothing. When you comment on a post, if your headline just says partner at, that's not going to pique anyone's interest to go and look at your profile. Whereas if it actually tells people the result that they get from working with you and says something different, people are going to go, okay, who's that? And then go and have a look at your profile. So really having your profile set up is actually probably the first step for anybody, lawyer or otherwise.
Well, Scott, wait. At this point, I have to make an announcement to my wife, who has a marketing agency and might be listening to this podcast. So
to be fair, though, your wife has said on numerous occasions she doesn't listen to this podcast.
No, she started to.
What's that? My husband's unsubscribed to my emails. Normal.
I just want to say that things that Melanie say are not necessarily my view, except about the content pillars.
Sorry, I'll put a disclaimer at the bottom. I have lots of very nice friends who work for very substantial marketing agencies, and I'm sure their fees are justified.
I told her the other day, my brain does not have content pillars.
Do you know what? Thanks for that, because now I've completely forgotten what my question was.
I've got several questions.
Okay, so you mentioned about there are some simple things that people can do. You said about that some people have got their profiles hidden. So if you're not a connection, they can't find you. Without kind of giving away everything that you do with clients, what's one simple thing that people can be doing if they're going onto LinkedIn? You talked about, actually, I think that the partner at is something that people should look at. But for some lawyers, they're so stuck in this idea of, I don't want to go anything. Mine says, I'm going to talk about turning lawyers into rainmakers, right? You don't get many lawyers that have the bravery to kind of go beyond partner at. But if you would say to people, starting off with your LinkedIn, let's look at your profile. What's the one thing that you would say to people to change, to improve?
To customize their LinkedIn URL. So the line that goes across the top, if they go and view their profile, they press view profile. On the right-hand side, it will say edit your URL. Tell them to get rid of all the ugly numbers and letters that LinkedIn gave them after their name when they joined, and change that for their practice areas. It would then say Scott Simons -employment lawyer, or senior associate criminal, or whatever, personal injury. But that is key, so that you come up in searches.
Yeah, that's another great one. I think mine says Scott the Rain Man Simmons, because somebody years ago referred to me as the Rain Man. I was like, I am absolutely stealing that one.
It's good, but there's a problem with that. No one is going to put into a Google search searching for Rain Man.
Yeah.
Or Rainmaker. They're going to search for
unless you really like the movie.
Unless you really like the movie. But
no, it's good though, yes.
Those people are probably not the people that are going to hire Scott. So
no.
That's different. Or like podcast or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So to be in there, podcasting, host.
Yeah.
Coaching, whatever it is, the key service, and you can change it over time, but whatever the key service is, like I have employee advocacy in my LinkedIn URL because I want to be found as somebody who goes into firms and teaches people, trains them how to use LinkedIn properly. So that's in my URL. Training is in my URL. Funnily enough, LinkedIn won't allow you to put LinkedIn in your URL.
I suppose that does make sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. But anyway, so that would be my one piece of
it's such a good one as well, because Elizabeth, does yours one still have all of the numbers in it? Is it really? I'm gonna have a look, because I do think to myself that when I see it, I do think, oh, they've not even done that. So how much effort is there elsewhere?
I mean, there's hundreds of things all the way through the profile to change on 90% of lawyers' profiles, unless they've worked with.
But some of it comes down to this fear about how they might be viewed if they go off track a bit. But what you've just talked about, changing the URL for something as simple as...
It's really simple, and it means that they'll then come up in searches. So they'll come up above all the other lawyers doing the same as them on LinkedIn who haven't changed their URL. They'll immediately, and in Google as well, they'll just immediately raise their profile with that one simple change. Takes 5 minutes.
I mean, scared of moths is not going to work very well. I do have that in my headline.
For you, with something like LinkedIn, what's the real power of it? Getting beyond the vanity metrics, and what's the real power for lawyers?
I think A, clients, and B, referrals. So I think the referrals are often sort of underrated, or people don't think of them as much because they're so focused on getting clients from LinkedIn, but actually referrals, they're warm. People are more than likely going to work with you if you've been referred by someone else. So when you're building your network, when the lawyers are building their network, they should be thinking about strategically people who they should connect to, who will refer clients to them, not just looking for the end client. And I think that's often where it goes wrong. People, they'll come to me and they'll say, right, I need high net worth individuals to be connected to, but actually they'd be better off connecting with the managing director of a trust company whose clients are high net worth individuals who will recommend them. So actually that's a much warmer introduction.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, I'm going to write this down as well.
I'll say anything, but I mean, you can just listen back to this. You can listen back to this whenever you want.
Because I'm interested in the headline, right? So do you have, and I've seen some of those recipes, do you have one of those recipes that says do X for Y? Or when someone writes their headline?
I would say that your headline should start with the result that people get from working with you. And then obviously you've got to say what you do. So like mine says, accelerating the visibility and revenue of regulated professionals. Some subtle words to that effect. I change it a few times. And then, there's other things you can add in, like if you've got any awards, some people put like contact details, website, even though it's not hyperlinked. Basically, but you want to be using terms that will come up in searches, basically. So there's no point putting something in there that people don't search for. I mean, you could use up a few of your characters, but you've got 220 characters to play with. So you want to make those work for you. So you've got to think about when someone's going onto Google and want them to find you, what are they going to type in? That's really the key, is what are those people going to type in?
Damn, I have to go change my entire thing. By the time people are listening to this, I would have changed my entire thing.
Yeah. Well, you'll be sitting there now doing it while we're chatting with Melanie.
I considered it.
So I want to ask you about Substack and how you got onto that, because the story is really quite wild, and it's a cautionary tale about LinkedIn or any social media platform.
Yeah, having all your eggs in one basket.
Right. So could you tell us how all of that played out?
Yeah. So basically, 11 o'clock one morning last summer, I think it was in July, I suddenly got that horrendous message that flashes up on your screen saying, you have been restricted. But at least most people get temporary restriction. Mine said I'd been permanently restricted. I was like, okay. I have to admit, for the first 24 hours, I thought, well, they'll lift it. Like, I don't know what it's for, but they'll lift it. Then I realised they weren't going to lift it. I raised a ticket. And then I didn't get anywhere, and I actually got a response saying, no, it's permanent. I still didn't panic because I was like, okay, this is quite nice. I've got a more relaxed week. I haven't got I haven't got to do any commenting on LinkedIn. This is okay. Like, I'm sure they'll lift it. Then it was when I started to get like the responses from them going, no, this is permanent. Stop emailing us. We are not lifting it. But they wouldn't actually tell me why. And this was where I then it was just an email ping pong. So I raised obviously all the tickets, the usual, went through Twitter help, and I was hitting a brick wall every time. So I went up to the LinkedIn offices in Farringdon, and they were very, very nice and very helpful, and sent they actually wrote an actual handwritten form, sent it through to California to the offices there. And they actually told me that actually you're better off, if you can, going to the offices than raising loads of support tickets, because then I had support tickets like all over the place. And anyway, that still hit a brick wall. But what was frustrating was that they didn't tell me why. So they wouldn't tell me why. And so they came back and said, due to privacy reasons, we can't tell you why.
What?
But I knew that.
It's to do with you, but due to privacy reasons, we can't tell you.
Exactly. So I said, look, okay, this is not the case. There is no privacy issue here because there's only you and me in the contract. So this is not an issue. But the trouble is you just get, obviously the customer services people have a script. They can't really go outside it. They don't really have any authority. So you sort of hit a brick wall and you get back generic responses. So in the end, I wrote to Ryan Rosansky, I wrote to the CEO, but then I did get a response. But what actually moved the needle for me was I found out who the law firm were that represent LinkedIn in America. I found a partner there. I wrote them, and I put forward my entire case as to why LinkedIn were not acting they were outside the law, because you cannot contract out of the law. So whatever their terms and conditions say, you can't contract out the law of the land. So there were various things which I pointed out to them were not the case, and that I had a right to X, Y, Z, as well as like my data to know why. Within, I think, 6 hours, I had my account back, and I had a phone call from one of the LinkedIn senior people in their executive escalations department. Phoned me. We had a whole long conversation. He said, look, we are trying to improve our systems, which are improving all the time, as to how you got caught in this and sort of obviously unfairly restricted. They did compensate me, and happy days, I was put back on within a few hours. So I have written all about that process on Substack, and actually I've helped a lot of people get their accounts back. And you can read the how-to. The article says quite clearly, step by step, what you need to do, assuming you haven't done anything really wrong, how to get your account back. And it's worked for numerous people. Funnily enough, someone actually messaged me this morning on LinkedIn and said, oh yeah, it really worked. I got my account back. It does work, because obviously they'll take notice if you write to them properly and tell them why they've got to give it back. But in that, it was actually 12 weeks it took me to get my account back. So in that time, obviously I was like, hey ho, after the first week of fun of not having to do much work, I then realized that I had no pipeline. So apart from, luckily I had an email list, which I've built up over the years. And that was really key. So I would always say to people, take your connections off LinkedIn. So whether that is by asking them to subscribe, by sending them something which in exchange for their email address, or just taking them off LinkedIn by by having a conversation off LinkedIn, but build up your email list at the same time, so that, because I was okay and I wasn't panicked, because I knew that I had 7,000 people on an email list as well, that I could still, I mean, most people didn't even know that I'd been chucked off LinkedIn, because they were still getting emails from me and etc. That was key. But during that time, I did suddenly think, okay, what am I going to do next? Because actually, a LinkedIn expert with no LinkedIn account is a bit like a struck off doctor. I mean, no one was going to hire me, even though my husband's like, you'll be fine, you still know about LinkedIn. I was like, no one is going to hire a LinkedIn expert with no LinkedIn account. So realistically, however good your reputation is. So then I thought, okay, what's next? What do I do next? I'd heard of Substack. I'd never been on it. I literally set up an account, learned fast over 3 or 4 days, set up my entire account with the graphics, with everything. So I was completely set up. Then I started bringing my LinkedIn connections across to Substack. And then I realized that actually Substack offers this incredible tech, which actually LinkedIn doesn't yet. Just things like podcasting, going live. You just press a button to go live on Substack. There's none of this faffing around with like StreamYard and Restream and etc. You just go live with a button on either your phone or a desktop. It's really simple. And that's attractive. Things like that. And so I realized that actually there are things about LinkedIn which Substack is not so good at, which is like laser targeting. So the best way is to make the platforms work together. And that is where I've really made it work, because I'm taking my LinkedIn connections and sort of engaging them on Substack. And on Substack, you can have paid subscriptions. So people then will pay to read what you're putting out, which they don't on LinkedIn. So I don't double my workload, but I put out different things on Substack, and then people come to my monthly LinkedIn lunch and learns if they're a paying subscriber, and they can have one-to-ones with me for less than it costs if they just engage me outside. But if they're within my membership it gives you the opportunity to have like a real community, and as well as like just a publication. So there's a lot of advantages to having them working together, which is the course that I ran last week with Christina God, because she's a Substack bestseller. So we combined forces. She knows all about Substack and I know all about LinkedIn. And so we put it all together for people in a course who want to move from platform to platform and make them work together.
It's interesting because I never thought of Substack as sort of a sales tool in the same way as LinkedIn. Like my perception of Substack is that it's this sort of intellectual, like more sharing of content, but not for commercial reasons. Like I always thought that's what Substack was for.
That is exactly how I think it started, as a real, like for creators, for writers, people who want like their musings and poetry and story writing. But now it's become a real business platform with people in venture capital, in family offices, in banking, in law, who are putting out either their own content or, sharing factual content. But the real beauty is that you can monetize it in a way that you can't on LinkedIn. And at the moment, there's no adverts. I mean, that will change, but there's no adverts on Substack at the moment. So they just take a small cut of your subscriptions. But it's definitely, it offers a different type of platform, and you can grow and engage community. And then, you can.
That's brilliant.
There's a whole host of other ways in which you can like monetize in sponsorships, etc. But yeah, and email, it sort of allows you to email market to people. You get their email addresses when they subscribe to you. But like everything, it's not a quick fix. You have to engage on the platform in the same way you need to engage on LinkedIn to get so that people get to know you. So it's not, a magic bullet. But if you've already got the content for your LinkedIn, then it's really simple to repurpose that onto Substack, which is what I did when I lost my account. I quickly had all the information that LinkedIn, because they had to send me all my data. So I had all my newsletters, etc., all the text. I just reformatted them into Substack, so I instantly had content. I wasn't starting from scratch. And then I brought over my LinkedIn connections to Substack. Not all, but many.
Did they ever tell you what you were suspected of?
Yeah, they said that I'd been caught by their bot who thought that I was automating, and I wasn't, because I wouldn't risk that with my own account. I'd be stupid. So that was it. And they said that it was just when they manually looked into it, because I'd made so much fuss about it, then they realized that actually it was a mistake. But unfortunately, a lot of people just get caught by that. So who aren't automating. I've had lots of people that they've got these restrictions and they haven't done anything. And just to know actually that even if you have done something minor, they still have to give you the right to make good, to say you're sorry and not do it again. So actually they have to do that anyway.
Look, we're this close from my full lawyer coming out and go, this is unreasonable in so many ways, and it broke, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I was
like, full lawyer.
I went full lawyer. Yeah, my account back, I can tell you. It was actually, to be honest, I'd sort of given up. And my husband was actually like, no, you should really try. And in the end, I was a bit over it after 3 months. But I thought, do you know what? I'll have one last ditch attempt. And I wrote the whole thing and then sent it. And I could not believe it. I was literally lying in bed one night, 11 o'clock. I was like, oh my God, I've got my account back. It went bum, 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 bum. I had all these emails from LinkedIn and they'd restored everything. I was like, wow, hey, I'm back.
See, this is the role of the lawyer.
It did come in very useful. And I'm always happy now to actually just share that. I mean, people are like, oh, you should monetize it. But actually, I'm happy to sort of share the knowledge and help people if I can. Obviously, if they want me to write the letters for them, that's a whole different thing. Everything is in the article that I wrote, basically. So you can literally follow it step by step as to what to do.
I mean, it was so interesting that I read through the whole story in the article, and I just thought it was absolutely fascinating. And besides the persistence to keep going for 3 months, just the fact that you were getting nowhere and they were giving you no information at all.
Just hit a brick wall.
Right. It highlighted to me, you said it's why you should try getting people off of LinkedIn and onto your mailing list. I've been doing that. I can't remember whether it was 2 or so years ago. I was having a backwards and forwards with a friend of mine, and I jokingly called him a bastard because he'd written something that I was going to write. I got this thing coming across my screen saying, you've breached our rules and we've taken the post down. Subsequently, for about the next 2 weeks, if I posted, literally, it was going nowhere. It was just complete crickets.
You were cancelled.
And there's nowhere to go because it was clearly a bot that had decided that it didn't have a sense of humour or understand the connection between me and this person.
Yeah, I know people who've been chopped up.
Yeah, and yet there was a post I saw months and months later of this guy just with every single profanity going. It was a really great post, by the way, but it was every single profanity. And I was thinking, wow, I got done for, and I don't think I'd actually used the word bastard. I think I'd dotted and stuff like that. And so you are sitting there going, what makes the cut and what doesn't? But the real point was that I realized that I don't own my connections. I don't own my followers. It's not in my control at all. And since then, I've made a real concerted effort to start conversations with people and get them onto my mailing list.
Just as a general housekeeping, everyone should download their data every month anyway, just in case it happens. And then you've got everything anyway. So it makes it a lot easier to rebuild if you've got all your data.
Download
they do have to
data.
Download data after the call. Download data, customize your URL.
Change URL, download data.
I feel like you're not giving as much back, Elizabeth, as you're getting here. You're just
man.
Right, instead of just going, I'm just going to sit here and write stuff down and Scott.
Take moths out of headline.
So you get to the point where Substack has become a second platform for you, and your content on there is brilliant, and I really enjoy.
It's more in depth.
Yes, and right. So I use Substack for more in-depth stuff. I find I can let my creative side go and do a lot more thinking than LinkedIn allows you to do. For people that are thinking about Substack, going on there, starting to write, what advice would you give them? Because you talk about engaging as well, and that's the part that I'm still not sure about for myself.
Set up your account and then type in a few sort of keywords of the sorts of things that you're interested in or you want to be writing about, and look at what other people are doing, who's successful and how they're set up and what they're doing, and learn from people who are slightly ahead of you. That's sort of what I did. I looked at the accounts in space as me, but in similar marketing, who were doing where I aspired to be to start with. So I knew nothing about the platform, and take advice from them, and then just start. Like you would on LinkedIn, it's the same principle. Just comment on somebody's notes. The equivalent of a LinkedIn post is called a note on Substack. Just comment on that. Post it. People like that. You can what's called recommend somebody's publication on there. So just start to build up some friends and goodwill, and then start and see what resonates with people. Invite your LinkedIn connections to follow you there. So send someone a direct message and say, look, I've just started on Substack. I'm posting about XYZ there. Let me know what you think, or I'd love it if you would subscribe or follow me, or because you can have followers there as well. They don't have to subscribe to your publication. It's sort of different terminology on there, but also their equivalent of a post is more akin to a tweet to the old. So you can write something on there that's 2 lines long. So it's maybe easier to get started on there from the fact you don't have to curate long posts with lots of images and infographics and as you would on LinkedIn. It's much sort of lighter weight from the point of view that if you're not writing long form articles, you can just write short notes, something that comes into your head, lots of musings, and people go viral with these 2-liners on there. So it's almost easier. It's less pressure to produce like this beautifully graphic design content. There's none of that really on Substack. There are in the longer form articles, but in the short form, people are just like posting. And it's not Instagram, so you don't need loads of selfies. You don't need loads of pictures, photos. And you can use them, but you don't have to have them. So you can just write a couple of lines, write about your commute in, write about your client, write about, just a couple of lines, and you've got something out there. It's much, I think, easier from that point of view.
I never thought about it like a tweet. And also that takes the pressure
like
off.
Tweet. Yeah, it's more like a tweet. I think the optimum on Substack, actually, the optimum length is about 70 characters, 65, 70 characters, which is short.
Wow. See, that's the thing. I've only viewed it as the space to do my long form thinking and writing. I've not at all thought of it as a place just to put
on Substack 2 or 3 notes a day, and that's how you really grow. I put out
3 a day. All right.
But they're short. They're not all they're not all, opus magnus. They're like just like little short notes. And I schedule them.
So at the end of each show, we ask guests 4 questions designed to get your thoughts on the legal profession as it is and how it could be, and to give our listeners some ideas of how they could possibly design their legal careers no matter where they are right now. So the first question, what advice would you give a lawyer just starting out in the profession?
To build your network before you need it. So to start thinking about building out your network of connections and referrals that will stand you in good stead for both business development and for your own career going forward.
Spot on. What's one thing about the legal profession you wish would change? And how do you think that change could happen?
It's not to do with content, but probably the focus on hours, because I know it's a quantifiable metric for firms, but actually I don't think it's always reflective of actually what's important necessarily. The amount of hours that somebody sits in front of their desk. It's to do with the amount of clients they're bringing in. It's to do with the quality of the work they're putting out. And so I think that the mythology around hours needs to still change. I don't think it's completely changed.
You just made Scott really, really happy.
I was just going to say, that look of exasperation you saw on Elizabeth's face as you gave that beginning of that answer. I just need to clarify something. Melanie, I did not ask you to mention the billable hour. I didn't say I didn't say, please find a way to shoot down the people out. That came all from you, because I get that thrown at me every episode by Elizabeth.
Oh, really? Yeah, I mean, it's just stop treating like billable hours like a badge of honor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously it's important, but it's not the be all and end all. And I think there needs to be more focus on the softer skills. So the business development, personal branding. There needs to be more mentoring of younger lawyers, more training given for not just technical training, but for personal branding and business development, so they can become rainmakers rather than just churners of documents.
What common myth about success in the legal profession do you feel needs to be debunked?
I think that partnership is the finishing line, and that is the ultimate goal, because I think that there are a lot of really brilliant lawyers in smaller firms and who then go into professional support. And I think that it's still portrayed as that everyone needs to be aiming to be a senior partner, when actually that's not always the right position for every person.
And finally, what would it look like if you could design the ideal legal career path?
I think it would involve many more conversations about personal branding and business development from earlier on in your career. I think that it's often reserved for the senior management, senior partners. And I see it even when we're talking about training and about sort of employee advocacy. People always start with, oh, well, we'll start with the partners, probably from an investment point of view. But actually, you need to be starting with the people who are coming up as well. So, it's the newly qualified who need to learn how to speak to a client, how to put themselves out on social media, how to build a brand, because that will sell the firm's brand. That's often what's missing, is that the investment is seen as only being worthwhile if it's for a senior partner, whereas actually it needs to be for the newly qualified as well.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Melanie, tell people where they can find you if they want to reach out for more information.
They can find me on my website, which is trevorzanconsulting.com, or my Substack, which is called The Link Tank, or on LinkedIn, of course, because I have on there every day for 90% of my day. I always welcome conversations on LinkedIn.
And can I just say how incredibly supportive Melanie always is for my posts, but when you see Melanie on other people's posts, she's so incredibly supportive of other people's content. That is amazing. How you manage to find the time to do that, I will never. But it's so incredibly lovely, and you are always consistent in your sport. So I wanted to just put that out there. I've loved this. I know Elizabeth has, because she spent more time writing notes down than actually asking questions. But a big thank you to Melanie for coming onto the show, demystifying LinkedIn a little and opening us up to Substack. We've been your hosts, Scott Simmons and Elizabeth de Stadler, and this has been Legal Off the Leash.